It's only been days and Kamala's VP is already embroiled in a growing scandal over his military service. Tim Walz is facing some serious accusations of bailing on his unit before being deployed to Iraq and stealing valor when he falsely claimed that he carried weapons in combat. Watch this.
I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Even liberal CNN couldn't bail out Walz on that phony claim.
There is a difference between being in a combat area, being involved at a time of war, and actually being in a position where people are shooting at you. There is no evidence that at any time Governor Walz was in a position of being shot at, and some of his language could easily be seen to suggest that he was. So that is absolutely false when he said that about gun rights out there.
But the most damning accusation is that Kamala's VP went AWOLs. Records show Tim Walz had retired right before his battalion was mobilized and deployed to Iraq. But a 2005 statement from his website shows that Walz knew he had a duty to go and broke that promise. He said at the time, quote, "As Command Sergeant Major, I have a responsibility not only to ready my battalion for Iraq, but also to serve if called on." All right, I'll start with the gun. He claims that he carried a gun in war when he was never in war and never saw active combat. What do you think, Jesse?
I respect this guy's service. He did 24 years, so that's fine. But if I served in a non-combat role, I wouldn't want anybody thinking I did. And I would go out of my way to snuff out any misreporting about me serving in combat. But he didn't do that. He not only didn't beat down those rumors, because he was in Italy guarding bases, okay. But he went out of his way to say he carried weapons. So that is a dishonorable thing to do. It shows deep insecurity, and it shows naked opportunism. And then he lied about his rank. And in the military, rank is paramount. It's kind of all you have. And people take that very seriously. And for him to say that, you know what, I made the decision to not go on this deployment, you know, before I knew I was going to be deployed. Remember back after 9/11, Judge, they were talking about going into Iraq right after 9/11. We were talking about in 2002. The midterms were about going to Iraq.
Right.
2003, we were in Iraq. This is 2005. If
right.
you are a reservist, you know you're going at that point.
Right.
And to say, I didn't know it when the timeline, he is a liar. And people take this very seriously in the veteran community.
You know, the truth is that Walz says he earned the rank of Command Sergeant Major, which is the highest enlisted rank, Greg. But he served as Command Sergeant Major, but he didn't stay in that role long enough to keep that title when he retired. So he lied about that. I mean, that is an out-and-out lie. And it matters to a lot of people.
Yeah, it does. You know, a lot of people may be ambivalent about this because they're not in the military. But it cares to the people who are in the military. They do care about this, so you have to respect that opinion. I like that he said he would ban the very weapons that he carried in war, which means no weapons, so I can go and get a tank. But you know what? Here's the thing. It's really easy not to say you were in war. I mean, I'll be at the beach, okay? People will come up to me and they'll go, "Thank you for your service," because I'm wearing a camo Speedo. And I go, look, I'm a civilian. I'm always quick to add, I'm a civilian, and then they go on their way. But the reason why it's like people in the military care is because almost all the cases of stolen valor are in the military. It's not like Jesse's going around Midtown telling everybody he's in, you know, the Navy SEALs, at least anymore. But it would be like, if you don't, let me put it this way. If you think it doesn't matter, imagine somebody claiming to take credit for your work. And you go to a bar to meet your other friends at happy hour, and you go, "You wouldn't believe this. This guy Jesse steals my work all the time." And then your friends go, "Oh, that's no big deal, dude. It's just what." They don't care because it's not their work. So you have to understand that the stolen valor is particularly important to the people that are in that world. So as small as these items might be, they're not small to the people in that world.
Right. And in that world, you know, for you to say the weapons that I carried, in war, I mean, the guy went to Italy. That was not a combat zone, Harold. I mean, how does this guy, he's a governor, he was a congressperson, how does this guy who accepted the running for VP not think this kind of stuff is going to come up?
Well, he ran for Congress a few times, and I think this came up. And when he ran for governor, this came up. And voters, whatever happened, voters reconciled themselves with it. Now, I don't disagree with the main point here. He needs to clean this up, explain it. I don't think it was anything nefarious. That's just my thought on it. I think both Senator Vance and Governor Walz are the only two veterans on the ticket. This time they both should be recognized and celebrate and give gratitude for what they did for our country. But I hope he cleans this up and fully explains it.
You know, the difference between Vance and Walz is that Vance was actually in Iraq. The Vance took it to Iraq. This guy was too scared to take it to Iraq.
I wouldn't go there.
Well, I would, and the men in his battalion would also.
I know, the difference is Vance didn't lie. It doesn't. The service doesn't matter. Yeah. Even though he did 24 years, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that he lied.
And actually, it is against the federal law to lie about your military service in certain situations. I mean, Congress and America takes this very seriously.
Okay, as an American, if you understand the sacrifice of the military and what people were voluntarily signing up to go do in Iraq and Afghanistan in 2005, 2006, after 9/11. This should enrage you. You should be demanding answers, and there should be a thorough explanation. He did run for Congress on this, and he continued to lie about the theaters of war that he said that he served in. Inside Walz's unit, which he did not deploy to Iraq with, J.R. Salzman, who was in the unit, lost his arm. There are big sacrifices that were made in 2005, 2006 in Iraq. A member of his unit was killed there.
Right.
You have a number of people now trying to fight this the media is doing. It's not even the campaign doing it by going after J.D. Vance's service and saying, well, he was a Marine, but he was only a public affairs officer. Mm-hmm. Well, in 2005 and 2006 and throughout many other years of the war, what were Marine officers in public affairs doing? They were escorting journalists around cities like Ramadi. And U.S. Marine Major Megan McClung was killed in 2006 escorting journalists in Ramadi. So maybe they should just take a step back, not try to game out who did what, and ask the vice presidential candidate for the Democrats to explain why he used a lie of saying that he was in war, carrying guns in war, said he was deployed to these places when he didn't go, for political gain, not just now, but throughout his career. And it matters because people died, they sacrificed, they were disfigured for the rest of their lives, and that's why it should matter to everybody when people do this.
But I just want to make sure, Greg, your beef with him is that he lied about, he didn't correct the record or lied about his service. You're saying something different. He didn't choose to go. He got deployed. The orders were given. He didn't say, give me an a la carte menu.
He said he was in Iraq.
No, but Katie, you're saying he went to Europe and he was also helping in Afghanistan, but he was there, assigned to Europe. If he had been assigned to Iraq, I think he would have gone. I don't hear anybody saying
he was assigned.
He was.
But that unit was deployed to Iraq and he left.
But previously,
he abandoned his troops.
J.R. Salzman was in his
here.
unit and was deployed to Iraq and got blown up and lost his arm. Go to his Twitter feed, see his photos of him in Iraq. That's where he was.
And I've never criticized J.D. Vance for what he did and how he did it. He should be applauded for that.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.